and welcome. We're coming to you live at our special time from the Republican National Convention in St. Paul, Minnesota. The Republican Party has confused some in political and media circles in recent days, with Senator John McCain choosing an outsider for his vice presidential running mate. Until a couple of days ago, few had heard of Alaska's governor, Sarah Palin, who's been accused with having very limited experience after only 2 years in office. With Hurricane Gustav hitting the US and disrupting the Republican National Convention's opening day on Monday in Minnesota, there was even less opportunity to introduce the new political player to a curious public and media. A curiosity that seems to grow daily with new revelations about Governor Palin's family. Many people are still wondering what is behind the Republican strategy and whether or not it can take on the combination of Senators Barack Obama and Joe Biden on the Democratic side. On this show, we'll be talking with leading Republican strategists on their insight on how to get the party on track and handle all the challenges being thrown at it. And joining me now is former U.S. Congressman and chair of the House Republican Conference, J.C. Watts. Congressman Watts is a Republican from Oklahoma and is also the driving force behind the soon-to-be-launched Black television news channel. Good to have you with us.
Riz, thank you for having me.
Well, sir, as we get going here, the convention is building up. Things seem to be back on track here after a little bit of disruption yesterday. We've got Senator McCain just walked into a chair. She was on stage yesterday. As we see live pictures of what's going on, she was on with Laura Bush, putting out the message for, I guess, a relief for those victims of Hurricane Gustav. So I guess the message has been now getting the party united, yeah?
Well, Riz, as you realized last week, the Democrats were in Denver with their pomp and circumstance and trying to sell their candidates. This week it's the Republicans. And as you said in your introductory remarks, Republicans have thrown a real curve to the opposition because John McCain selected a real person to be his running mate. And I think that real person, the fact that she does have 5 kids, the fact she's a housewife, she's a hockey mom, I think has been somewhat of a challenge for the Democrats to handle that. And I think when you look at the numbers, usually candidates get a bump out of their convention. Senator Obama's only gotten about it, depending on the polls that you look at, it's only gotten about a 6 or 7 point bump. So it's a real quagmire for the Democrats, and it was a good move by John McCain, in my opinion, simply because she was not a good old boy. You know, she wasn't a part of the political establishment. I think that's good.
Interesting you mentioned that, because we get a lot of emails from our viewers and they're very keenly following what's going on here. And I want to get an email that came in from Uganda from a viewer by the name of Chol. And Chol wrote in saying, do you think McCain can win while following and pursuing the same policies as Bush? Now, has John McCain managed to differentiate himself enough?
Well, I think John McCain has actually differentiated himself in many different ways. If you recall, 2 years ago, John McCain was considered by Republicans a maverick, too independent, he's unreliable. That's code word, Riz, for we can't control this guy. And I think he's differentiated on President Bush with environmental policy, on torture in terms of how we treat our prisoners on foreign soil. I mean, he's differentiated himself in many different ways. But again, this is politics, and the strategy is to tie John McCain with George Bush. We'll see if that works. I think Sarah Palin presents a little more of a challenge for the Democrats to do that, but nevertheless, that's kind of been the strategy from day one.
Well, following this, the campaign, which has been quite drawn out, certainly in the early stages, what do you think is most important to Republican voters right now? What main issues are they following?
Well, I think the conservative base in the Republican Party, which is the most reliable demographic that Republican candidates have. Obviously, on the Democrat side, you have the liberal base. Those people are going to work. They're going to go vote. Conservatives on the Republican side, they do that. Conservatives have not been energized to participate, to go and register people to vote, to walk door to door. They've not been energized. Sarah Palin does that. And so I think it was good. She's not a good old boy. It's good that it does energize the Republican base. which I think makes for pretty interesting politics over the next couple of months.
Now, that's one of the issues that people are asking about this. They're very, very curious to find out more about Sarah Palin. And of course, there's relatively little known about it. And I wonder, from your perspective, how the critics can be silenced once and for all about this issue of who is Sarah Palin?
Well, they're going to have to not only introduce her this week. She got an introduction last week, but she didn't get an introduction. I think they're going to start to peel the onion, obviously, and ask a lot of questions. She'll have to meet the press, if you will. She'll have to do those press briefings, answer those questions. I think a lot of the family stuff, and to be quite frank with you, I think it's out of bounds. Senator Obama, I thought, was real classy yesterday, saying, hey, the family thing should be off limits. They're out of bounds. So I think she's going to stand the test of time with the most important demographic, and that's with the Republican base. They like the fact that she is a mother. They like the fact that she's not a good old boy. They like the fact that she's a hockey mom. They like the fact that she's taken on corruption. So she, I think, matches John McCain very well in the sense that she, too, is somewhat of a maverick.
Well, let's bring in our other guest at this stage. Also joining us is Kelly Ann Conway, the CEO and president of the polling company, and she co-authored What Women Really Want, How American Women Are Quietly Erasing Political, Racial, Class and Religious Lines to Change the Way We Live. Good to have you with us.
My pleasure, thank you.
Okay.
I've got to ask you about the whole Sarah Palin issue. Of course, Congressman Watts just gave us a perspective on why he thinks the Republican base has taken a shine to Sarah Palin. From your perspective, does she match the kind of qualities that will you know, those who are uncertain about her, will they be convinced that she can do the job, especially as vice president, because she has to step into the main shoes if, God forbid, anything happens to John McCain if he was president?
That's right. Most of the attacks coming from Sarah Palin are coming from people who would not consider voting for the McCain-Palin ticket to begin with. And I think that we need to put in perspective the fact that what the Palin selection for VP does is it energizes the Republican base. It makes cohesive our constituencies. I have not heard one criticism about Sarah Palin's selection since Friday. And what it really does is it reaches out to many of those women who feel like Hillary Clinton was not passed over once but twice to her rightful place on the Democratic ticket. Look, when voters go into the box, particularly female voters, they have a couple of big issues, big ideas swirling around in their heads. If one of those issues is experience, because the anti-McCain-Palin forces want to make experience such an issue all of a sudden, then they're going to go in there thinking experience, they're going to say Barack Obama, John McCain, experience, that's not even a close call. I think that the Obama campaign took the bait early on wanting this debate to be something about Sarah Palin's experience, because many of us in the Republican Party have been wanting people to cover experience for the last 18 months. They have not wanted to cover experience, they wanted to cover biography. If you cover experience, it can't possibly help Barack Obama, who will still have that empty part of his resume with respect to national security and foreign policy have. If they want to talk about biography, Sarah Palin is an amazing American story.
Now, Kelly Ann, one thing I'd like to put to you is an email we got from a viewer in the United Kingdom. They didn't leave a name, but the viewer, and it touches on what I asked you, it says, do you believe Sarah Palin is ready to be president if something happens to McCain?
Yes, I do. I think she's prepared to be president because she's been a chief executive. In fact, of the 4 on the 2 tickets, she's the only one who has true chief executive experience in terms of running a city and in running a state. Senator McCain has chief executive experience in the military. But the thing is, when you are Vice President of the United States, you are working hand in glove with the Commander-in-Chief of the President of the United States, and you are served by the same circle of advisors and the same cabinet and that has been confirmed by the United States Senate. You're working with the same Congress that the President was working. No one does this job alone, regardless of who the President is. Bill Clinton didn't do it alone. George W. Bush doesn't do it alone. Sarah Palin would not do it alone.
And your risk to that question, you know, we can sit here and we can debate whether or not Governor Palin is prepared to become the president, whether Barack Obama is prepared to become the president. You know, I've got my opinions about that, and I've expressed those opinions, but you know what, the American people are going to have to make that decision. And I think at the end of the day, over the next couple of months, I think Sarah Palin, John McCain, they'll get the American people comfortable with her. He'll prove to them he's made the right choice, just as Joe Biden and Senator Obama. They're going to have to do the same thing. So the American people will make that decision, and John McCain placed his bet on Sarah Palin that she's the right partner and she can help me win in November.
I spoke with the respected Republican Denny Hastert, the former Speaker of the House, about the Palin issue, Sarah Palin issue. This is what he had to say.
Nobody on either side of that ticket has ever had any executive experience. They've never run a government. She has had that experience of actually running a government, working with a legislator, taking on special interests like the oil industry and saying, we're going to do it this way, and winning. And her family, I say that her family is not a tinsel-laden family. I mean, not a lot of shiny pieces. I mean, her kids didn't go to Ivy League schools. Her husband works 2 jobs to make sure that the family has a good standard of living. I think American people basically identify that, and those are conservative family values.
Kelly Ann, what basically Denny Hastert was saying is that, look, she's respected because she represents a normal family life. Her husband has 2 jobs to keep the family going. People will relate to this. Is that enough of an explanation?
Well, it's certainly enough of a biographical connection and a common touch. Look, people in America ask themselves 2 fundamental questions about their presidential tickets. They ask themselves, do I like you? That's the fundamental living room test. Do I want to see you for the next 8 years in my living room? Will I be proud if you're on the front page of the newspaper every day as my president? The second question, and the more important question this year, is not do I like you, but it's are you like me? That's really the commonality. That's where Barack Obama has come under assault for being too elite, too effete, too much in another world in terms of his schooling, the fact that he goes over to Berlin, Germany and fills up a stadium of people who want to see him there, the sort of out-of-touch comments about him. Nobody, you can say what you want about Sarah Palin. You cannot say that about Sarah Palin. She has this connective tissue, this commonality. I can tell you there are only 262 cities in the United States of America with more than 100,000 people in it. But there are tens of thousands of small towns the size of Wasilla, Alaska. The United States is a nation of Wasillas, not of Chicagos. And so we are really a fabric knitted together of small towns, and they really have so much in common. I think there are people in the mainstream media of America who don't know anybody who has 5 kids outside of the sitcom The Brady Bunch, so they really can't relate to the Palin family.
I'm going to ask you to stand by because we have to take a very short break here. We'll be back with more after that. But first, let's hear more from our viewers on what they would like to see as, or certainly from the next president.
I'd like him to help with the situation in Zimbabwe, just to stop all this political turmoil that's going on there.
We want the new president to pay attention to the millions of dollars coming to Afghanistan that does not reach the poor people, and we want him to focus on the reconstruction of our country.